Hey, all my Aries friends. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today with your September 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Aries, I'm talking about Aries as the first house and dictating the landscape of the chart. This is also applicable to Aries Sun and Aries Moon. And if you have 3 or more planets in Aries, this video is for you as well. When I refer to a day and a time, it's based on the Pacific time zone, so please adjust for your location. The month starts off with Uranus going retrograde in your second house. Uranus has been transiting in Taurus since 2018 and will remain there until January 30th, 2025. It's going to go from 27 degrees of Taurus to 23 degrees of Taurus. This is fairly significant because it's really sort of upending how you have perceived your skills, your voice, your family history, your own self-worth. Taurus naturally rules the second house. It rules our skills. It rules craftsmen. It rules chefs. It rules growing things. It rules wanting a sense of tradition and dependability through experience and shared experiences. And Uranus has been mucking that up. And I think it's been mucking it up because if for some reason anything's gotten stagnant for you or potentially even routine, or well, that's kind of redundant, or you're limiting is the way I want to put it, because Uranus has no limitations. Uranus goes out to the stars. It explores. It is a bit rebellious. It is genius in relation to the everyday thoughts of Mercury and the monkey mind. And here, this square that is happening is a revisit of some kind of about what's important to you and about how you want to use your skills on some level to create a sense of pleasure and joy and entertainment and fun. The fifth house of Leo is a house of the performer, the clown, the child. It rules our high school experiences. It rules romance in its early phases before there's any, history to keep it dampened or to dampen it in any way. So I think that Uranus in this fifth house is offering a little bit of breaking up something potentially that even has been stuck there in your emotional creative body for quite some time. Naturally your fifth house trines you. So when you express yourself, Aries, as an individual and allow that heroic part of the Aries energy to supersede the frustration part, I believe that this is where you shine the most. So this Uranus for me is really breaking up anything that's holding you back. And that includes anywhere that your childhood could have imprinted some sort of a less than thought, or a thought, sometimes that thought is, you're just too hot, Aries. You're just too hot. You're too pushy. You're too assertive. And so there you try to be cooperative and then you don't get noticed, or you don't get the opportunity, or, you feel like you're sitting back. And so I think what Uranus is doing is somehow rewriting that story and trying to allow you to experience more of your hopes and dreams, as Uranus rules your 11th house of hopes and dreams, more succinctly, more tangibly, and also really applying your own personal skills and talents, because there's nobody you want to have your back more than the Aries. Aries is the general to the king of the sun. Aries is the one that goes into the burning building and saves the kitty cat or the dog, not to mention the people. So when you remember that part of yourself, then you can allow this sort of rebellious part of yourself to shed that old story that doesn't suit you anymore, that doesn't fit you anymore. Later on in the day, we are going to see Pluto move back into your 10th house of public status, of reputation. It's going to give you an opportunity to revisit any fears you have. I believe that Capricorn is actually, while it squares you naturally in your first house, there's a cooperative component to this dynamic, because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So I believe that this is an opportunity for Pluto to go in and break up any of the old habits or the old unconscious psychological imprints of having to be dutiful to an authority without the discernment of your individual thought. And in doing so, you become a much more effective and influential leader and influencer. I think that's super important. And I think that's what is going on there, because when Pluto moves back into Aquarius in November, it's going to stay there for the next 20 years till 2043, really giving you an opportunity to experience a complete rebirth in a way that you can't imagine, because a part of that rebirth is going to be facilitated through technology or through advancement or through some sort of innovation of some kind. So this is just the beginning of the month. On the 2nd, we have a new moon in Virgo. That's happening in your 6th house at 6:55 p.m. I think this is significant because I see numbers and I notice themes and I notice so many layers when I look at the chart. So when I look at this new moon, I'm planting the seeds for new thoughts, new processes, new ways of analyzing things, of discerning things, sort of starting to rewrite that 6th house about, how is my mental health? Am I stressing myself out because I'm trying to twist myself into a knot that is not authentic to me, either mentally or physically? We see that the 11th degree is the master number of thought. And I think mastering of thought is understanding the ebb and the flow of it. We see that Pluto's at 29 degrees and Neptune's at 29 degrees. Both of those numbers reduce down to an 11. We see that Mars is at 10 degrees. I'm sorry, at 28 degrees, which reduces down to a 10. And at this time, Jupiter is at 19 degrees, which reduces down to a 10. Again, this theme of how do I think? Now, Mars tends to think hot. Mars tends to think in action. Mars is sort of go, 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 and then stop. And here Mars is on the precipice of going into your 4th house of home. And it's going into a very emotional sign of Cancer. So Mars is going to have to learn how to swim those waters a little more succinctly. And this is happening in just a day or two. So I say that because as I'm aware of all these 11s, and I can't help but just look at the South Node in Venus adding up to an 11. I know that's not really exactly directly on point, but it hits me. It emphasizes that thoughts are things. And the more I'm aware of that, the more I can have grace for myself as I go through the human mind and the processes of the autonomy of that mind, and that I'm just infusing thought into it. So I think this is powerful. We also see that this new moon is making a powerful opposition. And I say powerful because there's a real opportunity to start to connect to Saturn asking us to create structure within our our metaphysical, our spiritual, our practices of connecting with the divine, and our creativity. Sometimes the human uses their creativity to unleash that monkey mind. So I think that this is a potential for feeling initial fear, trepidation, even uncertainty, because the 12th house of Pisces for you is where you feel invisible, where you feel unseen, where you spend time alone and sleeping. And that's even something that's uncomfortable for Mars. Mars is the type that sleeps a few hours and then gets up and starts to do something, depending upon how active your Mars actually is and what the other dynamics are in your chart. There can also be hidden fears here. And the new moon could be planting the seeds for really removing those obstacles or those things that you feel stand in your way or stand in your unconsciousness, your subconscious. Very much the 12th house rules the subconscious, and Saturn rules historic fears, and Pisces rules my soul's history. So this is a real opportunity. Now, at the same time of this new moon, we see that Venus is on the supergalactic center. She's She was, I didn't notice yesterday, I should have probably looked, but she is, I think it's important at this new moon's time to look at her conjunction with that. The supergalactic center is at 2 degrees, 22 minutes of Libra. And this here is offering me an opportunity to create a really healthy relationship with myself and my Libran qualities. Um, you know, Mars or Aries is not necessarily always considered feminine or receptive. It takes so much action, but these planets represent various parts of our character and our soul's imprint. So here, this is really creating a relationship with myself as source, but also my value, and creating a sense of peace and harmony. And this south node would be maybe being slightly egoless to my initial Martian reaction, sort of using that as a measure of your evolution in awareness. I think it's really powerful that Venus is in rulership, and as she crosses over this point, because she represents partnership in general, the health of her relationship with herself is key to the relationship health outside of herself. And this is supported by Pluto really transforming and working with her to transform that psychological imprint. Let's go to the 4th, where Mars will have moved into Cancer. And this initially, being your ruling planet could feel a little bit like, the pot has blown over, the steam has blown up, because Mars is not particularly emotional and nurturing, and Cancer is very emotional and nurturing. And for some reason, for me, I kind of think this plays out for you, maybe potentially in a patriotic way, where you're impassioned about dynamics going on within your root system. That could be your community, your neighborhood, your country, the world. Even is our planet Earth is our home. Mars is really feeling this jarring energy of leaving the air and going into the water. It's a big slowdown, and it frustrates him, but it's so important for Mars to be effective and to trust his intuition. And that's what Cancer has to offer him here. Is to trust that inner knowing, and that sometimes no action is action. And sometimes it's about floating on your back for a few minutes so that inspiration can come through. I believe by the end of the month, Mars will be much more comfortable in this energy, and we're going to start to transform that hot pot into the steam that gets that locomotive moving. So I think this is super, super powerful times for awareness and for at actually harnessing that awareness in a way that works for us instead of tanking us. Now, on the 9th, we will see Mercury re-enter Virgo. And I think this, I'm going to back up to 12 o'clock because this is pretty significant for me as an intuitive astrologer. Mercury is the focal point of a transit yod. And a yod is the finger of God. Now, we don't really talk about those in transit. We usually look at them in a natal chart. But when such powerful planet like Pluto and Neptune are pointing at a planet 3 times inside of, a month, I think it's something to pay attention to. And it's about these everyday processes of what are we absorbing? What are we thinking about? How is the media influencing us? We see at this time the moon is making a square to Mercury. Mercury is now sitting at this point for the 3rd time. It went over it and it was a little bit jarring. Then it backed up and reviewed the situation, and now it's moving itself forward again. This is between your 5th and 6th house, Aries. So there is a real review of your own personal liberties and what you want. You could be feeling a sense of rebellion for things that have been clipped, thwarted due to financial dynamics or, things, we all know how the world is running financially right now. So I think what this is an opportunity to recognize that there's always going to be a layer of imprint. There's always going to be a sense of something outside of our control. And Mars does not like to be out of control. Then we have this connection to spirit, to your soul, to your 12th house, which is the Akashic records of your soul. And having Uranus in a great aspect to Pluto, and then both Uranus and Pluto in sextile to Neptune. It supports the 2.0 version of what this yod is pointing at, which is a revision of the monkey mind. Mercury is so strong when it gets into Virgo because it's not only the ruler, it's exalted. So I think you're really going to be thinking about how to be of service in new ways, in ways that speak more authentically to your talents and your skills and your voice. So I think this is a really, I mean, we're just barely have not even halfway through the month, and we can feel this all so strongly. Let's go to our first eclipse of the second eclipse season of the year. This is on the 17th. It's happening at 7:34 p.m. Eclipse is always in usher in fated events, they say. And I think of them as fated choices where outside influences give me an opportunity to choose. And sometimes the choice isn't easy. So it feels like fate is taking over. But I don't believe that for 1 minute. I think the human has pre-designed some of these experiences to make those choices. So here we see the sun is at 25 degrees of Virgo, and it is in an opposition to the moon, illuminating something, and something that could potentially be erosive, something that could potentially be holding you back from expressing your full self. This Virgo energy also rules the stresses of the mind, you know, the everyday activities, literally daily habits as we get up. We see the sun is supported by Uranus and by Pluto, and the opposition to Neptune and the moon is reflecting in some way that I feel that I have more power as I connect with my oversoul. I have more power because we're looking at the moon is reflecting the sun. The sun is our ego. And with the moon conjunct Neptune, I feel like this is really speaking of that I'm a peaceful warrior. And I know that deep to my soul. And as I stand on that platform, my life starts to transform. Right now, we are on at the time of this eclipse. Aries happens to be the first house on the wheel here. And so this is literally on the ascendant. And, you know, in case you know the systems, I would look at Placidus because if you're a late degree Aries rising, this is actually happening closer to your 11th and 12th house cusp. But it's a very powerful illumination of your connection to the voice within, your intuitive knowing, the healing of your heart through a strong connection to that sense of heroism within you. All right. Now, at the same time as this eclipse is happening, Venus is on the fixed star Spica, which is the voice of angels. And Venus is a receptive energy. She's in her rulership in your 7th house, and she's making a quincunx to the moon. So at this time, she can't see with her eyes. This is the only way out for her at this moment to reconcile whatever she needs to reconcile is through her heart, through her receptive energy. She can't see how much she's transforming right now. Her transformation is not visible yet, but she can easily connect to that inner feminine, and through her connection to the divine and its support by your 3rd house here and Jupiter transiting that, you can start to feel, because Jupiter also rules the connection to the angelic realm. And I think that that is going to help ease this unknowing quincunx. And then this opposition to Chiron, because Venus here, it feels like her duty is to be in partnership sometimes, to be in that human give and take. And it might just be that Chiron is saying, oh no, your individuality and your connection to your heavenly team, to your soul's voice, to listen to that voice of angels is where the bounty and the benefit comes from. But the psychological imprint and the fears of how that would be received in the public eye could be more than you could take, you know? I mean, not more than you could take because you're strong, Aries, but it might feel like an uphill climb for others to see the transformation. And I don't think it's supposed to be about others. Okay. Let's go to the 22nd, where where the sun will enter Libra and Venus will enter Scorpio. We go a little later in the evening. This is fairly, for me, a big deal because I'm a big fan of the Shapley cluster and these points in the stars that really accentuate the universe's cooperation with us. And when we harness these energies, we become very powerful. So we spoke earlier how Venus was on the supergalactic center in your seventh house, really identifying the relationship she has with herself. And now the sun is doing that very thing. The sun is in fall in Libra because it's exalted in Aries. There's a lot of boss energy in that Aries dynamic. But here, the relationship with self is really about how my ego and my drive and my ambition and seeing myself as source energy. And I think that this for Aries is not about seeing it in a combative way, but in a more harmonious way, as if you've seasoned yourself and you understand yourself. Because the sun in fall is in a place where it's expected to be cooperative. It doesn't get to be the boss here. It gets to be the co-boss, it's supposed to represent a more benign what's the word I want to use? Deprecate, like it's almost like a giving up of self for the greater union. Libra represents this, civility, and sometimes for the sake of civility we don't express ourselves, but this is the conversation with the self as source energy, even if you are not necessarily respected at this moment in your partnership house. Now we have Venus moving into your 8th house of other people's money. And Venus has gone into detriment. Not your ruling planet. You co-rule Scorpio. Venus moving into Scorpio is where she feels a little out of control, where feels that other people have more influence over her than she has over herself. And she feels weakened and she can act a little shady there. But it's interesting because as Venus moves out of her conversation on the fixed star Spica, she is having to confront on the Shapley attractor at 2 degrees of Scorpio her false attachments, where she has really not aligned to a deeper truth, and the universe is offering her an opportunity to surrender them, and in the surrender expand. We've got so much power and so much ability for abundance here in the Scorpio energy, but she can't see it because she has to stand on her own here. We see there is a quincunx to Neptune. This is her creativity, her sense of connection to the divine. Here's this square and a half to Saturn saying, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if am I strong enough? Am I smart enough? Am I pretty enough? Do I know enough? And Pluto is saying there's always going to be an underbelly of tension when we endeavor anything on our own. When we release the false attachments and we start to think of ourselves as source energy, there is a vulnerability that exists in the human experience. It's inherent. It cannot be avoided, but that's where the triumph lies. So it's a powerful time during these planets having sort of this diminished power at this time. And I don't know if it's diminished as much as it's a recalibration of how we perceive power. Let's go to the 26th, where Mercury will officially enter Libra and will join that super galactic center. And now we have this whole little dance going on between the egoless south node, the spiritual south node that allows the toxicity to be eliminated. We have the sun and Mercury sort of really revisiting the thoughts. What are my thoughts? The sun wanting to drown out Mercury's everyday mind, that part of me that says, no, you've got to get this done, or you've got to go get that, take care of this person, take care of that person. Again, the nodes are in opposition, stretching for that Aries experience, and Aries experience imbalance, meaning not having to fight to be seen instead, but just to be seen because you see you and express you authentically. So I think this is the conversation that is going on, as Mercury's thoughts are, sort of dancing around the relationship that I have with myself and how I express my ambition and my ego. And we're still looking at Venus, trying to give up these false attachments. It's not easy because she's now in this blind spot to her individuality, this quincunx. She's in a square and a half to Jupiter. So she's really unsure of herself here because she's just not sure if her beliefs are strong enough. And we could throw the moon in there, but the moon will move very quickly. But at this particular time, she's sitting in her fifth house, wondering if her creativity is good enough, if her who she is and her self-expression is there. And will it bring her what she wants? Because everybody wants something just a little bit different. And depending upon the stage in life, can very much dictate what that want and desire is. Sometimes it's not about partnership, but it's about ourselves and just learning about how we receive. Sometimes it's about our creativity. Sometimes it's about creating money and security and wealth. Venus, again, these personal planets really encompass a lot of genres in the human experience. All right, let's go to the 30th. We're going to go back to 12 o'clock, kind of a general time. And we see that the aspects have really toned down by the end of the month. The stars are, cooperating for the most part. We have a square between Jupiter and the moon. That's going to pass fairly quickly within hours. We do see Mercury and the sun conjunct in your 7th house. So this could be a little bit of a challenge because this again is sort of this point with the South Node of being egoless within your mind and within your own sense of ambition. And when I say egoless, I really want to define this as understanding, Aries, that you're naturally a pioneer. You're naturally going to want to express yourself. The egolessness is your mind is transforming, and maybe it's not about others really getting on board just yet, letting you anchor into your own balance, your own sense of harmony, that peaceful warrior that you are. And as you do that, others will experience it, and it will transform your public public status, your reputation in a way that I believe will support the version that you want to express versus a version that you've been labeled with when maybe you were in younger chapters of your life and you were a little more reactionary than you were intentional. Now, one of the things I like about the end of the month is this beautiful aspect between Mars and Saturn and Venus creating a grand trine. Venus is a little bit out of orb. She's a little loose in it, but the ability to really start to put that spiritual practice. This is where Saturn has really benefited Mars, slowing him down enough to understand that it's not just your hot emotions that matter, but the vulnerable emotions, all the hues of the human experience. And as you connect to those, they become the intuitive rudder, your North Star. And I think that's evidenced by this moon here, even though the moon moves very quickly. But it's also at 16 degrees, which is that Cancer degree. So, and I look at that 14th degree, and I think it's the Taurus Venusian degree. So there's a sense of being able to implement my skills and transform my self-worth as I'm, willing to be authentic to myself, my wants, my desires, my needs, and my value. So I think the month ends really nicely. Again, your ruling planet is not in its favorite place right now, but then again, Mars gets to learn how to be a warrior on land and at sea. And if you ask me, most of humanity, there's been war often on the seas since it was the only form of travel. I thought it was the piracy there. All right, my Aries, that's it for September 2024. Again, my name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer. If you'd like to book a reading with me, I am available. My information is below. Please like, please subscribe, please share, and please join me Sunday mornings live at 11 a.m. Pacific time. That's where we look at the transits for the week ahead, and we do an angel reading, and we pull a tarot card for each sign. All right, everybody, have a wonderful Aries. Have a wonderful September. I'll see you in October. Bye. Where's my end recording? There we go.